Hello, hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel and today we're deep diving on the Anastasia Beverly Hills Rose Metal palette. So if you're interested in swatching and comparing it to the Nouveau palette and a demo, then I hope you'll stick around, hang out, keep watching, and let's dive into some swatches. And P.S. there's a Frank appearance, so listen out for that. All right, so before we get into an application, let's go through some swatches. Now, I am very nervous because my palette came in with these two center shades here busted. All I did was lay a tissue on it and gently press in with my fingers, so it's not going everywhere, but that tells me these are extremely soft. And I think we're going to have a mess on our hands, but I am going to be comparing it to mainly the Nouveau palette because they have a lot of similar vibes, but they are different color stories. They definitely look at first glance to go with each other really well. So I'm going to pop those swatches on my arms and we'll take a look at those. Okay, so first off, let's start with the mattes. So the mattes in the Rose Metals palette are here. On the top we have Ashes. Next up is Dune, followed by Sunrose, and then Noble. So the first one, Ashes, is like a very, very gray with a touch of rose. So a very gray taupe with rose in it. Then the Dune shade is a very deep kind of brick with some chocolate brown in there. Then we have Sunrose. I keep wanting to say sunrise. Sunrose, which is a very beautiful kind of like a clay, like a terracotta clay, almost like a light terracotta pot that's dry. And then last is Noble, which is a very deep brown that has a decent amount of red, but is probably... These two are the most neutral, still with a hint of warmth, and then obviously these are very warm. So those are the mattes in the Rose Metals palette. Then we go into the mattes of the Nouveau palette. So up top here I have Paloma, then we have Metro, then we have Liberty, and then we have Fleur. So I'm actually going to build Liberty up a little bit because this one's really interesting to me. So the first one obviously is not a duplicate. That Paloma shade, which is a pretty much my skin tone, you can hardly even see it on my hand here. Then when we get into Metro, it's kind of similar to that Dune shade, this one right here, but it is lighter and more kind of pumpkin-y, a little bit more orange to it. I'm hoping that this is reading okay. It's not quite as dark. Let me build up Dune for you here. Let's just build up all of these puppies. What's really interesting too, looking at these, is that Nouveau looks much lighter in the pan than it goes on the skin. So there you can kind of see the matte kind of terracotta clay color in the Nouveau palette is much lighter. Then if we compare the deep shades, the Liberty from the Nouveau and the Noble from Rose Metals is much more brown, whereas Liberty from the Nouveau palette is a very gray brown. It's very, very dusty in comparison to the reddish brown that you get in the Rose Metals. And then the last shade, which is Fleur in Nouveau, is closest to either Ashes or Sunrose from Rose Metals, but you'll see here that it is much more pink. Can you get similar looks? Yes, I would almost say that if you are deeper complected, the mattes in the Rose Metals is going to be better for you, whereas if you're more fair, Nouveau all the way. Again, both of them kind of straddle cool, or not cool. Both of them straddle warm, slightly neutral pretty well, minus I think Rose Metals is a little bit warmer in that sense. But let's get into the shimmers. You'll notice too now that I'm thinking about it. I did not swatch Wisteria. Obviously, that is a beautiful matte shade, but there's nothing to compare it to in the Rose Metals. So I highly regret wearing a white shirt, but let's go through this. So I have, again, Rose Metals on this arm and Nouveau on this arm. So I'll just let you take that in. This is where they are vastly different. So let's walk through Rose Metals, and then we'll do the same thing that we just did. So up top is Rose Quartz. This is probably the least shiny. I would say that this is almost a satin to me, and it's a lovely kind of neutral rose, taupey rose. Then we have Heavenly, which is a beautiful gold. It's like a very neutral gold, which I appreciate, leaning champagne almost. Beautiful for the inner corner. Then we have a Royal, which is a nice burgundy, and it has like very kind of golden warm shimmers. It's probably not going to do it justice. There we go. Then we have Element, which is a warm brown, almost has a touch of copper to it in the shimmers, excuse me. Then we have Haze, which is a really interesting color. It's almost like, it's brown, but it has almost like a greeny goldness to it. Very like a super, super antiqued gold. And then we have Rose Fire, which is exactly what you think the name is. A very fiery, warm orange color with gold shimmer. Then we have Nocturne, which is another interesting color. It's that really mucky, almost like a deep, cooler version than Haze. Much deeper, a little bit cooler, verging on like a deep green that's almost black, and there's a lot of gray in that. And then we have Nova as our last shade, which is again kind of in that greeny, mucky, grayish kind of world, but it has more brown to it and is much more warm than Nocturne. Beautiful shades swatched. Absolutely beautiful. Then if we go into the Nouveau palette, I have swatched on the top Wisteria, which is a beautiful kind of like green, blue, gray that shifts gold. Absolutely beautiful. Then we have Isle, which is kind of like a light, not coppery, a light peach with gold and a hint of red in it. Then we have Belle, which is like a burnished bronze. Then we have Peacock, which is absolutely stunning. It's got a very, very red purple brown base and almost shifts like blue brown from MAC. Very, very pretty. Then we have Lily, which is a very like a rose gold with different colored shimmer. Like I'm getting some flashes of blue and green and gold in that shimmer, but it's very, very pretty. A mid-tone peach. And then we have Hope, which is another interesting color, kind of like that burnished green, and we'll get there, but there's some bronze to it. And then lastly, we have Muse, which is probably my favorite way to smoke an eyeshadow out, or an eyeshadow look out, excuse me. It is just a very, very deep neutral to cool brown. So if we put those side by side, immediately my mind goes to kind of these three, the bottom two, and then this one being very similar to some of these shades that we have going on. So let's kind of compare those. So if I compare the two deepest shades in the palette, one in the Rose Metal is much more kind of mucky with green to it, whereas the Nouveau palette is much more neutral to cool brown. And then if I compare, yeah, everything's backwards. If I compare these two kind of like mucky green gold shades, they look super similar. Those are probably the most similar in the palettes, and the only difference I'm getting is that, again, a little bit of difference in warmth, but on the eyes I think they're going to look exactly the same, and that is Haze from Rose Metal and Belle from Nouveau. So we've got Haze, Rose Metal, Belle, Nouveau. We'll swatch them side by side as soon as I get done with this. Actually, let's do it now. Haze. I'm going to pull a you-know-who with this, but I'm out of room. So there you go. We've got Haze up top, Belle on the bottom. A slight difference, but that's the closest match, I think. And then I think, honestly, that's where similarities end. You do have common themes, like with these peachy kind of sunray colors, but they are very different. And then there's deep shades. Let's just show you the difference on my finger. Not my finger, my hand. It's hard to see the difference. There's Frank. Here you can see the difference a little bit better. One is slightly lighter and cooler. Or I should say them together. The bottom is darker and cooler. You get a bit more green in the top one. I'm gonna go calm Frank down, but those are the swatch comparisons. And I will be back to do a look. All right, I think Frank is calm enough, and I know that this is gonna seem dramatic, but this is my favorite white tea, so I'm gonna prepare myself with the microfiber, and we're going to jump into application. I will say, swatching those and just the state that it came in, this palette is a slightly more crumbly and definitely more soft. Like you can see it's getting messy, and it's getting messy on my desk, hence the bib. So we're gonna jump into a look. I am going to start with Ashes here in the crease. I'm gonna take that on a trusty 15 from Refer, and I'm gonna show you just after I dip my brush in. I know, so tap off, basically is what I'm saying. I know that Anastasia is traditionally very powdery, and I know that that bothers some people, but it doesn't bother me as long as they perform and they stay on my eyes, and I've never had an issue with her formula staying or, you know, being pigmented and all that good stuff. So I love how they blend, and I can only assume that the powderiness lends to that. Make the decision for your own. I'm also someone who likes to really blend colors together without them being immediately muddy. So keep that in mind when I'm talking about this formula. But I'm going to go ahead. I took that in my crease. I'm going to go on the outer half of my eyelid. Eyelid. There's going to be so much Frank noise in this. He's wilding out. He's like, it's the weekend. Why aren't we playing? All that. Okay, where do we want to go from here? I think I need to like let one of the shimmers lead the way. I know I want to use Nocturne to smoke it out. Heavenly will go on the inner third. Let's do Haze all over the lid, which is the shade here. I'm just going to tap that on with my finger. Yeah, I like that. I'm losing daylight. Oh, this light situation with daylight saving is so annoying. My bib fell. Although putting that on with a finger, I don't have fallout on my face yet. I did get a little bit over here when I was swatching, but pretend it's not there. Okay, now that we got that on, this is going to be a smoky look. It is... Do I want to do Nova and then build Nocturne along the lash line? I think that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go in with kind of like a fluffy shader brush, which might be a bad decision. This is the 11 by Katie Jane Hughes and Spectrum. I'm going to go into Nova, this shade here. Oh boy. Actually, we're getting into some detail work, so let's give the people what they want here. Oh yeah, that was a clean one too. All right, and with that on the brush, I am just gonna start building some depth in the outer third. Not really in a specific shape, just not going too far up into my crease here. Okay, done with that, which it did add some depth, so I'm gonna go back into that initial shade Ashes and just make sure I'm blended there. This is definitely more of like a grungy, muddy looking palette. I think you could control it, but with the style that I do eyeshadow, it's gonna be a little bit more grungy. So then I'm gonna go into Nocturne, the deepest shimmer here, and I'm gonna build that outer V shape like I normally do, first starting on the lash line, flicking it, and then flicking it inwards just to blend, just to give me much more depth here. Yeah. Oh yeah. I will say these are much, much flakier than the Nouveau. I'm curious, this seems to be a new formula, because if I go back into some of my older palettes, and the one that I have on hand is the Soft Glam, the shimmers in this are nowhere near as flaky. These are almost like a smooth foil. These are flaky until you really get them rubbed in, and I'm getting some in my eye while I'm applying it. And I don't notice that as much with the Nouveau palette. Frank. Apologize for that knocking noise. He's chewing against the base of my chair. Because why wouldn't he, you know? And then I'm actually going to go into Noble, which is that deepest brown matte, and I'm just going to go over right on the lash line here. This is where I'm getting a little bit more fallout onto my face. But I did powder in preparation for that. So I'm just gonna smooth that line out. And I'm gonna grab another smudge brush, or a pencil brush, smudge brush, pencil brush, whatever you wanna call it. I'm gonna go into that Heavenly shade, that lightest gold. Let me see if I can get this to focus. Can you see how flaky that is when I pick it up? Also, shout out Bethany for doing a French tip with the ice or velvet nail. Ice gels, velvet nails, whatever you want to call them. Beauty, anyway, very flaky. I might regret this, but I'm going to pop that right into the inner corner. Oh, that's pretty, but see what I mean? Let me get really close here. I think it'll show better on the other eye. Once you start to rub the eyeshadow in or blend it into the skin, it smooths out, but until you get it to that point, quite flaky. So if you have really sensitive eyes, when it comes to like getting stuff in your eyes, buyer beware type of thing. You know, I'm gonna go back into that shader, and I'm actually gonna go into Nocturne just to stamp along that line just to make sure it's blended. And then, as I always do, going back into that initial crease shade, and again just blending all of these edges together and bringing it up a little bit. This is where we're at. I like it. So I'm going to go add mascara in the rest of my face, my blush and all of that, and then we'll talk details of have to address something. This is why I don't do matte lips. This color is beautiful. It's that kit I got during the sale from Make It by Mario, the mauve nude or the mauve pink, whichever. I'll pop a picture up. Stunning color. It goes perfectly with this palette, but my lips look like raisins because it snowed quite a bit. It's cold here, and I'm going to add a little bit of the Posh Gloss in Bikini from Victoria Beckham, which I think is a perfect pair to this. That Mario kit just adds a little bit more depth than what this gloss gives on its own. I feel much better. So let's get into my thoughts about this palette because I have a lot. So first and foremost, I do want to say I am a huge Anastasia Beverly Hills palette lover. The formula, it's the formula that I love. I have panned one of the shadows in my Soft Glam 2 mini. I'm about to pan a second. This has gotten a lot of love from me in the crease. This is a very, very good travel friendly palette. You can get day looks, smoky nighttime looks. This is a beautiful bridal palette. The list goes on. This has gotten so much use for me. I wore Modern Renaissance on my wedding day and felt beautiful. I've loved her palettes and formula for a very long time. Now, not every palette has spoken to me, so I have not tried them all, but I am extremely happy with Nouveau, and I noticed that these shimmers, like I said, are a little bit different from her older shimmer formula, and these ones, honestly, there's really only two that get a little soft, and it's Lily and Wings here. So Lily here, Wings here. That's like every shimmer in this Rose Metal palette. And as you saw, if you have this and you're not worried about what I'm about to say about Rose Metals, they are beautiful companion palettes. They play in that mucky green rose, warm brown, neutral brown. Like, it is a warm to neutral muted girl's dream, both of these palettes. Absolutely phenomenal. However, I'll never be able to travel with this because, I mean, I've already repressed 2 just from its shipping here. Look at the damage I've already done after just swatching a few times, and this is my second look with this palette. I love the look that I got, but it is a very kind of grungier look. You can get a much more defined look with the Nouveau and something like the Soft Glam 2 because they're not as soft and powdery and flaky like I showed you. So they kind of hold their shape on the eye, especially when you blend the way that I blend, or if you like to use brushes similar to me. It's gorgeous. The colors are gorgeous, but the texture of these shadows, I think, is a pass for me. And I'm going to offer you a suggestion. This palette is almost $60, not on sale. Typically, like, I have no problem that I invested that in Nouveau during one of the sales. However, I have a palette on its way to me, excuse me, that I think is going to bring me all of these colors and not bring me quite a grungy look and not be so soft that I'm terrified to travel with it. I think that this is a pass for me. Obviously, I have it, but the texture of this just wasn't where I wanted it to be. Again, colors are absolutely gorgeous, but I do think that I have a palette coming that's going to suffice in that way. I don't have anything else currently in my collection that is this kind of like muted, mucky, toned down, but still gorgeous. Oh, even these 2 shades, like, looking at this, I get inspired to make so many different looks. I think there's so much you can do with it. But then even just doing comparison swatches of the Nouveau today, this is more my speed. I'm more of a this girl than that, and I think you're going to know which one you are. Very, very grungy, muted, and delicate. Pick your poison. I'm not against grungy makeup looks. I love this eye look that I came up with today. I think it's very pretty. But when it comes to what am I reaching for more, it's going to be the Nouveau. So that's where I land with this. I'm sorry if that's disappointing, but not everything works for everyone. So I hope you're having a lovely day and this was helpful to you. Let me know down below. Tell me if I'm getting better with swatches. There were some wonky ones. But regardless, I hope you're having a great day and I will see you in the next one. Bye.